Welcome one, welcome all. It is Tuesday, August the 8th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is 8 at 8, triple eights, as the cool kids like to say, which means we are live on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, as well as the Blog on the Boys Twitch channel. We have moved our weekly roundtables to 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. Pacific Time. For those of you watching in Oxnard every week, every Tuesday evening, we discuss the latest and greatest in the world of the Dallas Cowboys. I say we. My name is RJ Ochoa. You know me from all throughout the Blog on the Boys universe, the same place you know the three other horsemen who are joining me here tonight. If you are only listening, then this really isn't for you. But if you're watching, we're going to go in clockwise order. And we're going to start with Tony Catalina, who you hear on Mondays on First and 10. You read him all throughout Blog on the Boys, as mentioned. And now at Pro Football Network, Tony Catalina, congratulations on the PFN gig. Did you buy your wife a brand new Mercedes with the money that came in?
I don't think that's coming just quite down the pipeline just yet there.
Wow. You wrote today how to watch Hard Knocks, had all the relevant information that starts in an hour in real time for us. So very excited to check it out myself. Sean Martin is here. You hear his show after Tony's on Mondays, Hidden Yardage with Mark Lane. You can also read him at Blog on the Boys. You can also find many memories of him in my brain, at least. Sean, it's a privilege to be undertaking another Dallas Cowboys season with you.
Yeah, as always, man. I'm hoping to bring some of the old throwback good vibes with getting a haircut and leading to a good time on the roundtable. I don't know how many Cowboys fans remember this at this point, but it used to be a legitimate thing. When you would get a haircut, really good things would happen for the Cowboys. I'm hoping the same, even though we're just kind of making the Cowboy hat feel a little bit too big tonight. I guess I just need to let my hair grow back in and make this hat fit how it's supposed to again. But other than that, we're feeling good and hoping to keep the haircut vibes going.
Thanks for the throwback, Sean. It was Cedric Thornton who, the first time I tweeted, I was like, I'm getting my haircut, so some Cowboys news is going to happen. Cedric Thornton signed with the Cowboys, and then I don't remember who it was after that, but you're right. For a little while, it was a thing. So it was, I was a Frolic inspiring sort of mascot for the Cowboys at that point in time. Chris Halling has chosen violence. If you're watching on the visual side of things, wearing a Swedish national team soccer kit. They, of course, eliminated the women's national team here in the United States just a few days ago. So, Chris, I know you're back from Sweden, but what's up with the salt in the wound? What the hell?
Hey, listen, I also love America. I'm a dual citizen, but I'm happy that, them losing. I'm happy that it happened to my other home in Sweden. And it was a really fun matchup. So
you were just there. And actually you were there for the last few weeks when we debuted the new edition of the Writer's Block on the Blog on the Boys podcast network. But today, Tuesday, August the 8th, you joined for the first time. You're now a regular on that show. So like I said, you can hear all three of these gentlemen all across the Blog on the Boys podcast network. You can read them at blogontheboys.com. Chris Caleb offers that it is just downright disrespectful of you. Sadiqa Charles chimes in, says, at Blog of the Boys, RJ, how are you? I'm doing really well. It's nice to be back. I was in Oxnard, California last week with my friends from San Antonio Sports Star. Turns out you miss home a lot when you're gone for a week. And I had done a lot of traveling. Chris, I think you know the feeling.
Yes.
So we have a lot to get to tonight. We're going to react to the first Dallas Cowboys depth chart of the season. There's all this hullabaloo, connect, of course, for my fellow Aggies, about Leighton Vander Esch playing the edge a little bit so far throughout camp. Sean, I know you and Mark touched on that on Hidden Yardage. We have a wide variety of things to get to, but more importantly than that, we have a game to get to. At the end of this week on Saturday afternoon, the Dallas Cowboys will host the Jacksonville Jaguars at AT&T Stadium and then head back to Oxnard, California. Tony, do you know why? I do, but what's your best guess as to why the Cowboys are doing it this way, heading to AT&T Stadium and treating it like a road game before going back to California?
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I'm sure you have it, like you said, but I think that's for the travel purposes. I feel like that's a legitimate reason there.
Sean, I will tell you, so Chris and Tony can cover up their ears. It is because next week there are Metallica concerts at AT&T Stadium on, I believe, Friday and Sunday. So a little bit too logistical of a problem for the Cowboys. So does that make you upset with Metallica, Sean?
Hey, I'm here for any good AT&T concerts. Everyone always just kind of pins me to, want to go to the country shows, but I got a Springsteen concert coming up later in the month I'll be at, and, some rock shows coming up. So, if there's a good rock show getting in the way of Cowboys football, or at least the logistics of how they're coming into their first game, then that's all good over here.
Okay, well, fine. That's fair. Okay, we're about to get started, but before we do, I don't even know what year this is doing the roundtables at Blog on the Boys. It's at least third or fourth. Every roundtable, of course, there is a winner. That's the way the roundtables tend to operate. And in the past, I have always tabulated my score keeping in an incredibly democratic way. off to the side here with a piece of paper and a pen. Gone are those days. We're not doing that anymore. From now on, we'll be continually updating the score on the screen as we roll throughout the night so everyone can have an understanding of where they lie in the competition at that moment. Chris, as you can see, zeros across the board. Who do you anticipate? Actually, I want to know, who do you think takes home the gold, the silver, and the bronze tonight? What is the place of finishing that you all three will be in?
Well, the gold will be going to me, like, kind of like my kit that I have on right now. Silver, I'm gonna give it to Tony, and bronze, I'm giving to Sean. I'm sorry, Sean.
Well, that is the way things currently stand. Based off of what Chris just said, he's handed out a few points effectively. Caleb says, dang, BTB tech update. LOL. It's not so much a tech update. It's actually a bit of a lazier option for me. Then I don't have to do the math like at the very end. So Chris is out to an early lead here on this week's round table. Let's get to it. The Dallas Cowboys did release their first depth chart of the season on Monday afternoon. Tony Catalina, this is, of course, unofficial. That word bears repeating several different times. I think if you look at the Atlanta Falcons depth chart as an example, Bijan Robinson is currently third at the running back position. So there is a little bit of eye rolling involved here. But that being said, what is your biggest takeaway from what the Dallas Cowboys have put out for all of us to assess?
Kind of looking over it, it's interesting because I know there's a lot of people within the fan base that have difference of opinion about the running back position. So seeing that Rico Dowdle is in the lead, if you kind of read through the tea leaves a little bit with what Mike McCarthy and some of the staff is saying to the media, like that seems to be the way it's leaning. But I mean, if you look to our show and a lot of different shows and people who cover the Cowboys, I think most people are ready to give Malik Davis the job. So I think, seeing that and kind of confirming what you're hearing is intriguing. I don't know if it's surprising to me, but it definitely one of the first things that caught my eye.
Sean, I saw Jeff Kavanaugh from 97.1 The Freak have a sarcastic tweet today on Tuesday about how there's no way Deuce Vaughn is RB5 on the Cowboys, which is where he's currently listed. Again, just to kind of, poke a little bit of fun at the depth chart. But do you take any stock in what Tony is saying, that maybe Rico Dowdle does have the inside track, so to speak, over Malik Davis? I know Tony is somebody who believed in Rico a year ago. Obviously, the injury was part of the formula and everything that went into last year. But I guess who are you ready to crown behind Tony Pollard, Sean?
Yeah, I think we're still relatively early enough in the process where some experience pays off. So I think Dowdle having that experience edge is just helping him here, but he still has a long way to go to really fully hold down that spot. I have been interested to hear everybody from Brian Schottenheimer to Mike McCarthy to even Jerry said that they plan on using the backs in the passing game more. So that's going to be a big factor to who ultimately wins this job. And that's why I do think Davis can surpass Dowdle and make that impact that we all want to see from him and make that year two leap that Tony's been calling for and all that. So yeah, I do like that Dowdle has the inside track right now just because they're going with experience. They're seeing that he can be a legitimate player if you need someone to step up with an injury or anything that may happen to either Tony Pollard or Malik Davis. But yeah, at some point, I think this will flip and you'll see Pollard, and then in that two spot, it should be Malik Davis.
Chris, it does feel like we've sort of gotten rid of a lot of the sort of fatty storylines surrounding the Cowboys, like Mike McCarthy's run the damn ball thing, the Dak Trayvon argument, thing, whatever. The one kind of thing that's still hovering has to do with the Cowboys bringing back Zeke Elliott. It feels like every day, every other day, there's some sort of report or rumor connecting him to them. And Kevin offers in the comment section, my takeaway looking at RB2 and 3 tells me we need to re-sign Zeke. So Kevin, Chris, is saying, to hell with Rico Dowdle, to hell with Malik Davis. I want Zeke Elliott to be RB2 on this team. Do you feel that way, even 1%?
Probably not. No, I just think that it's time to kind of move on and kind of let that ship sail. Unless Zeke is very committed to playing that really goal line back and come in for pass protection. But, I think that would be a very big, pride thing that you'd have to set aside, going back to the team that released you and then really set yourself up for being that secondary role behind Tony Pollard. I think it's better for Zeke to just kind of go to the Patriots or go to a different team where I think he can be utilized more and that he should be utilized more. So I think that we should kind of just stick with what we got.
So I think that's well said, Chris, and I think we all agree with you. In fact, I think I would honestly say, like in a random room, 97 out of 100 people agree with you. There's just those three are very loud, and so that's kind of what how this conversation tends to unfold. Rick Ursulani says Jalen Brooks over Simi Fehoko. At present time, Simi Fehoko is ahead of Jalen Brooks, at least on this depth chart. But this does kind of take us into a subject that I didn't prep y'all for, but there is a prize, so you've got to be ready to adjust. So that being said, how many wide receivers are you carrying, and who are they? Chris, I'll start with you because you literally wrote about this on Monday at the site. You're carrying 6 receivers. Yes. I think we all agree who the top 4 is. Nobody has to rehash this. We have CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert has slid in. I think we're all willing to give Kevontae Turpin a spot, whether you factor in his special teams contribution or not. That is 5. Your 6th, Chris Halling, is Jalen Brooks, not Jalen Moreno-Cropper, not Simi Fehoko.
Yeah, it's Jalen Brooks, and it's not just because I'm biased. I did go to high school with him, and I'm a big fan of the guy, and it's awesome seeing him do what he's doing in camp. But I definitely do believe that he's just really impressing in training camp so far. I think Simi kind of came in with some high expectations because there was a lot of talk over this offseason about him kind of developing a connection with Dak and really ready to take that next step. But from everything I'm seeing, Jalen Brooks has been outperforming him. He's coming down with great catches, and he's really running some crisp routes in training camp. And he's doing great work on special teams too, and the special teams reps that he's had. And that's a big key thing that the Cowboys look for when they go deep into that depth chart. So right now, I think the nod goes to Jalen Brooks. I think that there's more time for maybe Simi to kind of, take that next step in preseason. I think these preseason games are really going to have a big say in that. But as of right now, I think the trend should be Jalen Brooks.
Sean, do you have any level of disagreement, or are those your 6 outright?
Yeah, I'm with you on Brooks. I've just never really got where the Simi Fehoko experiment is supposed to go. Like even looking at his college tape at Stanford, it was like kind of a, in the body type of an inside type receiver, but they played him in both of the inside and the outside. The Cowboys are trying to make something of it on the outside, but speed kills in this game. Speed is important, and in every area where Fehoko hasn't separated, Jalen Brooks seems to be able to make that separation and stretch the field in a way that the Cowboys are really finally starting to value again. So just that alone might give the edge to Brooks. And of course, he's, the younger player on the better trajectory. So I'm with you on potentially moving on from Fehoko in favor of one of these other more athletic, younger receivers.
Tony, I'm going to change the question for you because you nodded a lot. So I think you agree with both Chris and Sean in terms of the 6 that we all think the Cowboys should carry. I agree with the 3 of you. Kevin offers, has Tolbert shown he can play any special teams yet in camp? I didn't see Jalen Tolbert involved in any sort of special teams activities during the week that I was there. Tony, are we ready to kind of graduate Tolbert to the level of like, it doesn't matter. Like, that's not what he's for. Like, he's an offensive player at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what the expectation and the hope is for Jalen Tolbert. And ultimately, when you're carrying 6 wide receivers, and I think and I could be wrong, but I think they went into the initial 53 last year with like 7 on the roster. So,
and then they stashed Gallup on the IR.
Yeah.
Situation. Yeah.
So like having 6 or whatever, the bottom 2 are going to be special teams, like for the most part. And I think that's what's so impressive about Jalen Brooks is like, not only is he like a gamer and he's out there and he's gritty, but his special team work. I saw him do a gunner rep against CJ Goodwin and Bossman Fat, Kelvin Joseph. So for him to kind of, for him to do that, so beyond that, Jalen Tolbert, he is, he's factored into this wide receiver group as a true wide receiver. I don't know if we need to see him. I don't know if it's a myth, but there's a lot of people that say wide receiver 4 has to do special teams. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore. Like it's good. It's a plus, but I don't think we need to see that. And he can still be a productive member of this offense.
Caleb says a wide receiver room of Lamb, Cooks, Gallup, Tolbert, and Brooks. There's no Turpin listed there, but obviously is a night and day difference compared to last year's wide receiver room. Consider that Dennis Houston and Noah Brown were 2 of the 3 starting wide receivers for the Cowboys in week 1 in the building that Sean Martin has. I was going to say is your background, but no, you're there, Sean. You're in the end zone at AT&T Stadium. It's the proper time of day for that player. At least Siddiqa agrees, says I say 6, CD, Cooks, MG, Tolbert, Brooks, and Turpin. So all that is pretty chalk at this point. Now, Kevin says -2, Tony. We heard the same thing about Tolbert last year, that he was ready to play. How did that work out? Tony, I'll let you answer after I deduct the points. Tony, you had climbed all the way up to 3 points, Chris 7, but you both had some deducted from you. So Tony, you currently sit at 1, Sean 3, Chris 6. That being said, Tony, are you at all fearful that maybe we're taking the cheese on Jalen Tolbert for the second year in a row?
No, because it just feels different. I think anybody who's been there, and you physically have actually been there, I think the conversation, the rhetoric around Jalen Tolbert is much different than it was last year. I think there was hope. I think people are excited about the fact that he was a 3rd-round pick at an exciting position. They like the prospects of it. It didn't materialize, right? And everybody's owned that. Everyone knows. I mean, nobody's been a bigger deter of his game last year than me. So, but for him to come out here, put it all behind him, kind of have the blinders, a fresh start in year 2, it's been about the tape. It's been about the film. Like, he's just out there making plays. He's much more confident. And I actually tweeted about it a couple of days ago. Like, Dak Prescott seemed to find him a lot, and I don't know if that's with point or if that's Dak Prescott trying to force feed him to feel have a connection, or if he's genuinely just earning those looks because there's the trust there and he's winning. So either way, Tolbert doesn't seem to be going away, and I don't know if we had this level of we feel this good about him last year. So I don't think it's comparable.
I agree with you that at the very least, the opportunities will be there for Jalen Tolbert. That was one of my big takeaways from my week in Oxnard. Whether it translates remains to be seen. This may all just be psychological, but our expectations of him are so radically different. A year ago, the Cowboys were dependent on him, emerging as this like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, almost level rookie. And it didn't happen. So it was like, oh man, what a loser. Like, I can't believe the Cowboys spent a 3rd-round pick on this dude. Just by the very nature of Brandon Cooks' acquisition and Michael Gallup's return from, the torn ACL in the season that followed, the pressure on him is much different. Brian, Tony has offered you 5 points because you agree. Everyone in all caps in Cowboys media is talking good things about Tolbert, and that wasn't happening last year. So an adjustment on the score at this point in time. I'm doing my best to keep this as real time as possible this season. We have a tie in first place, Tony and Chris at 6 points. Sean, you are slacking. But I'll give you an opportunity right now, Sean, to kind of make your way back up here. If we pull the depth chart back up, you will notice that Leighton Vander Esch is listed as a linebacker, but that's a lie because we have seen Leighton Vander Esch playing some edge so far throughout training camp. You and Mark Lane did discuss this on this week's episode of Hidden Yardage. Your thoughts, your takeaways? Do you think this is a real thing? Do you think this is something that we see throughout the regular season to a serious degree, or is this just kind of training camp catnip?
Yeah, let me give you another, throwback to our old school days covering this team. I thought we moved on from the whole, like, oh, we can't use this player and he's only a left end and, we need a right end. Like, that used to be how we had to talk about the positions on, particularly in the defense. Offense, not so much, but, defensively, that's how we discussed this team. Dan Quinn was supposed to be, and has been to this point, the counter to that. And he finds different ways to use players. This isn't exactly a brand new thing. Vander Esch actually did play some edge last year, whether we remember it or not. We probably choose not to because he wasn't that great in that role. If we can see that, Quinn sure can as well, which is what we talked about on Hidden Yardage. And, it just gives him a different look. It's all about changing different looks. And if he's coming off the edge one snap, does that set you up to, fake him off the edge the next and then have him drop into coverage and use it as some way to disguise a person rush or any number of things that you can give it, an offense to have to account for another player lining up in multiple spots, gives you an advantage. So that's what he's trying to do. Quinn is with Vander Esch. Overall, the depth at the actual defensive end and defensive tackle spots for this team jumps off the page to the point where it would take a whole slew of injuries or something unforeseen to, really have to take this seriously to the point of like, is Vander Esch a needed option at edge? We're going to see a lot of Parsons and Sam Williams and Armstrong and Fowler and everybody else before it gets down to this point. But yeah, if it's something that they can use for a couple snaps to have an advantage, then we might see it still. And we saw it last year, and it's going to continue into this year, it seems.
Yeah, Chris, it's not like the Cowboys have depth to play around with at linebacker. So it's a kind of a matter of like, well, this is cool, but like, what the hell are you doing? Like if there's one person who you can't spare to utilize this way, to Sean's point, to everyone's point, I mean, if we put the depth chart back on the screen for a second, we can find 15 pass rushers, it feels like, on this team that we really like. So is this just, playing around, you think? Like, do you put any stock into this at all? Do you not want to see it at all? Like, what are your thoughts?
I'm hoping that it's kind of just messing around in camp because I personally don't want to see that. I think that you're not utilizing Leighton to his strengths. I really think his biggest strength is his mind. And I think that he really does know how to run the defense. And I think he's that leader in the middle. And I don't love the depth behind him. I love seeing what I've seen from Damone Clark, but then you got Jabril Cox. And I feel like that experiment kind of hasn't panned out the way that we had hoped at this point. And like you said, we just have so many edge rushers. I don't really see the point in having Leighton at edge. We have so many guys deeper in the roster who I think would probably be better at that position. However, I'm not going to overly critique Dan Quinn because, he is this defensive guru who has really changed the culture on the defense in Dallas. So maybe he's putting him there for some specific schemes, maybe to fake out the offensive line and maybe have them questioning and second guessing the whole formation. But overall, I would like to not see that. I would like to have him continue playing linebacker.
Tony, Kevin offers, if you give Leighton edge snaps, it is to help you move Parsons around without switching personnel to confuse an offense. Tony, I have zero interest in moving Parsons. Micah is a pass rusher. I don't want to drop Micah anywhere. Let Micah rush the passer 100% of the time.
Yeah, but I think the way they can do that, if he's over center, if he's over the middle, like if they got, there's different ways to kind of get him to rush the passer from different unique vantage points. So I can understand why they would have a guy like Leighton Vander Esch or Micah Parsons kind of be multiple. Is you don't want to kind of lock in and know where they're going to be every snap. I think it's part of Dan Quinn's creativity. It's year 3 where, okay, we've kind of put the principles in. We have guys in this room that understand what the expectation is, what we're going to do. Let's turn it up a little bit when it comes to creativity, because there's going to be some bad packages here with some of these guys, especially with some of these pass rushes like you mentioned. And being able to have a unit that looks like DeMarcus Lawrence, Dante Fowler, Mozzie Smith and Micah Parsons, and just like it's so unique. And I think right now this is what training camp's all about, right? We see people talk about interceptions and poor play in practice. Well, half the time we're just trying to figure things out anyway, right? So Leighton Vander Esch, does he have a bag? Can he pass rush? Does he have the bend? Does he have the ability to do so? Let's figure it out now instead of waiting until week 1.
Okay, I think that's well said. By the way, on an injury front, Mozzie Smith had an MRI on Tuesday, and there was a little bit of collective breath holding. It was reported by the Dallas Morning News that all is well there. Tyler Biadasz had a bit of an injury scare on Tuesday, but DallasCowboys.com reported that he's fine. And David Durden, Mr. Prospect X, has a concussion as a result of Tuesday's practice. He's not expected to play in Saturday's game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, let's see here. Kevin, I had the score tabulated, but Kevin says +5, Tony. Exactly. You can bring Parsons on every snap and do it in a way where Parsons isn't in the same spot every play. A reminder to those of you who are watching live that your points are tabulated and we're handing them out as we go along. So, Tony, you now have the lead. You have 12 points to Chris's 8. Sean, you are riding caboose with 7 points at this moment in time. Tony, as our point leader, you get to decide who's going to take the next question first. So be a little bit strategic here. If you want to go first, that's up to you. If you want to go last, that's up to you. Who's going up?
Let's let Sean get a chance to try to come out of the cellar here.
Okay, Sean, do we believe there is a competition brewing at QB2? The Cowboys did, of course, pay Cooper Rush this offseason. He went 4-1 last year. There were real people who have driver's licenses and put pants on in the morning that thought he should start over Dak Prescott. But, in spite of all that, Will Grier has apparently closed the gap a little bit so far. He's gotten some work with the second team, perhaps not enough to leapfrog Cooper Rush quite yet, but we are about to begin preseason play on Saturday, which could change the calculus involved. That being said, do you believe that something is actually happening, or do you believe this is all just fodder?
Yeah, those people may have a driver's license, but keep them off the roads, and especially in Austin here, please. I would appreciate that. But no, I don't see much of a real competition here. Ever since that Vikings game, it almost feels a little bit archaic at this point to keep bringing up that game. But it really is a landmark thing for Cooper Rush to earn a lot of trust when he got that primetime win. It was just so foreign.
You're saying that game from 2 years ago, just to be clear, from 2021, yeah. Right?
As Cowboys fans, to see that happen with a backup quarterback, way different than what we were used to in the Brandon Whedon and Matt Castle days that, preceded it and everything like that. So that win, it's not the only thing he's hanging his hat on, though. Of course, what he did last year, stacked right on top of it, and you put all that together, and I think he's your bona fide QB2 at this point.
Chris.
I definitely don't think that there's a competition. I understand that Will Grier comes in and he kind of has like, I guess, like the more flashy kind of play style. People think about his playing days at West Virginia and how he was so great in college, and it's kind of like a sexier play. But at the end of the day, Cooper Rush is a winner, and he's shown that in his time as a backup quarterback for the Cowboys. The 4-1 record last year. I mean, he obviously is not a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. I think we can all agree with that, but he did exactly what you need from your backup quarterback, and he kept the ship afloat. And I would go as far to say that Cooper Rush has proven that he's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the entire league. Maybe not skill wise, but just being able to manage the game and being able to keep the team, on the right path. So I don't think that there should be any competition. I'm happy that Will Grier is on the team. I think that he can be a great QB3 even, but at the end of the day, Cooper Rush, I think, has solidified himself as a backup in Dallas.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy has often praised Cooper Rush's mental processing and kind of abilities in the classroom. Tony, Kevin has set you up a little bit here. Says Greer is getting second team reps so the team can figure out if they want him at QB3 or want to move on at QB3. Now, obviously, the NFL amended its rules in many ways over the course of the offseason. QB3 is now sort of a rainy day fund for NFL teams, so to speak. And it does feel like Will Grier is going to kind of maybe make this team just because of that specific rule change.
Yeah, so that kind of took the sting out of what I was going to say. I think the competition isn't really there. It's fun to see if Will Grier can develop, and I think the thing that hurts Will Grier the most is the fact that there's comfortability there, right? We know what we've seen from Cooper Rush, right? We've seen him do it. We've seen him go 4-1. So there's value in that, in understanding what you have at the QB2 position. But like you said, all three of these guys are going to dress and, be ready to go now with the new rule change. So it's almost fruitful or fruitless to even talk about. But no, I think it is what it is. Like, Will Grier has some talent. He has some intrigue. I think there is some things there. I was actually a kind of a proponent for it online where I'm like, hey, like, I know last year there was conversations like, is this Will Grier? Is he going to win the job? And obviously what we'd seen transpire in 2022 changed all of that, right? I mean, Cooper Rush did what we wanted and more with his opportunities. But early in camp, I think probably about a year ago to this day, we were talking about how Will Grier was like QB2 and he ended up fading out at the end. But up until this point, he was decent last season.
Let this be a lesson to everyone. Tony was strategic and let Sean go first, and Sean went out on the limb first, which awarded him more points than anybody else. We have a three-way gridlock right now, 14 points apiece, all solid answers. But again, Sean just kind of got the most because he was first. So that was very generous of you, Tony. I know you did offer Sean the opportunity. Maybe Tony's that confident. I respect that if that is the case. We have two more questions that are going to kind of cover the rest of our show tonight. But before we get there, that sounded like it was a break, like a word from our sponsors. We don't have that. But before we get there, Caleb has offered a question that I would like each of you to answer. Remember, points are being tabulated. What are some things that everyone is going to be looking for / hoping for in the first preseason game coming up? Sean, you made the biggest climb after the last round. And I know that you wrote about this as well at the site. So generally speaking, kind of keep it to one, maybe two things. We don't want to, have you take all 8 and then Chris and Tony are left screwed. But so what are some things that you want to see on Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, speaking of climbing, when this game is happening, I'll actually be somewhere on a mountain in Montana, most likely. So, I'll be sure to record it, catch up, and get my thoughts to Cowboys Nation as we always do. But my co-host Mark kind of got on me for my pick to this question when we talked about it on our podcast. I said running back as my position to focus on, and he kind of said, well, that's the free space on the bingo board for this game, not really out of the box. But I know you don't scout to the level of who your opponent is in the preseason nearly as much as the regular season, but still, you look at the Jaguars game last year. Pollard had the second highest amount of carries of the whole regular season. Ezekiel Elliott was nicely rated, at his average point of I think 16. So now you're probably playing this game without, of course you're playing without Elliott. You're probably playing without Pollard. This is a good chance to see, against a similar defense, the one you've already seen to some extent, what these running backs are actually going to be able to do. And we should know a lot more about the Rico Dowdle, Malik Davis competition just after these 4 quarters.
Okay, so you've taken running back, basically a wide net to cast, but that's the plan or the flag that you have planted, Sean. Chris, what are you going to be looking for on Saturday?
I want to see the question marks on this team currently. I want to see, how does Kelvin Joseph play? I want to see, how does Jalen Tolbert play? I want to see, how does Simi play? I want to see how Brandon Aubrey plays, and even the offensive line. I want those guys, because I mean, it's fun to see your players play and like see, like how they look after the offseason and everything. But we got some question marks on this really loaded team. I mean, yes, they aren't the make or break question marks outside of the kicker position. I think that could be a make or break question mark. But is Kelvin Joseph going to take that next leap that we want him to? Is Jalen Tolbert really going to make that next leap? I think we'll see some of that in this preseason game. And I'm honestly really excited and looking forward to see Jalen Brooks. I want to see if he can ride the momentum that he's been riding in training camp. And on the writer's block, I made my hot take of the preseason game that he was going to score 2 touchdowns. I don't know if he'll really get 2 touchdowns, but it'd be really cool to see him get in the end zone at least once. That would be really awesome.
Tony, I tried to lay out the rules and tried to make sure nobody took a million things, but Chris just blew right past that. So good luck, Tony Catalina. Try to make it unique and original and interesting. What are you looking forward to on Saturday that isn't everything on the team?
I want to see these young camp stars and how they translate, right? I mean, there is some overlap with Chris in the sense that Jalen Tolbert lumps into that, but I want to see Eric Scott Jr. What does he look like against a different team coming at him? I want to see Cavante Turpin in a wide receiver role rather than special teams, because it looks like they're going to let Deuce Vaughn take all the special teams reps. So, and that brings Deuce Vaughn. I want to see how's that 5'5" guy that everyone's excited about translate. So there's some real this young intrigue there that people have been, and then, we were just talking about Jalen Brooks. Like, that's a guy who seems to be carving out a spot for himself in camp. How does that look against, a Jacksonville Jaguars secondary? So I think there is enough young guys here where I feel comfortable with the nucleus of this team. I don't really care. There's a lot of guys I hope we don't see at all. There's a lot of stars that I know Jerry talking about Michael Gallup and these guys playing. And I'm like, I really don't want to see that. So as far as I'm concerned, give me all these young guys that we're really excited about and all these insiders videos that we're seeing in practice. And RJ was one of them last week. So when we see those guys, those are the guys I want to see and how they translate.
So I will have all of you, all these were great answers, by the way. We've updated the score. Tony, 25 points, Sean, 23, Chris, 27. There was a lot of meat on that bone. Shout out to Joseph Randall, obviously, super easy joke. But I wrote that or put that in before Kevin's comment. Kevin said +5, Tony. Kevin has been very generous to Tony tonight. 100% practice means nothing. How do they look in a game? Not buying practice hype anymore. Richard, for what it's worth,
says really high scoring. We don't usually play this high scoring of a game.
So that being said, Tony has been given 5 points from the crowd. I will say, Chris, Sean, if I were you, I'd be a little bit upset because at this point, 30 burger. Yeah, at this point, I would say half of Tony's points have come from the crowd. They're not even earned, really in a literal sense.
Kevin's getting the gold medal right now.
Wow.
You have to change cowboy hats or something to try to vibe up this crowd.
So Tony, you are in the lead with 30 points. I don't know. Maybe you need to get Kevin's contact information, and maybe he needs the Mercedes with your new PFN money. Maybe not your wife, but we'll see how all that shakes out. Anyway, so it's time for 2 kind of wide-ranging questions. Now is the time to be as sort of ambiguous, as vague as you want, as detailed as you want. It really is up to you. We're going to start on the positive side of the spectrum. What are we buying from training camp so far? You can pick anything. You can take any storyline, any headline, any data point, any piece of evidence you want, but something that has happened so far at camp, an idea, a play, a moment in time, something that you believe was the first building block of something that is real and going to come throughout the 2023 season. Tony, as our resident leader, you will go last. Sean, you are in last place, which means you are up first. What are you buying from training camp so far?
I'm going to buy this pass offense being viable to sustain a full season again. Or if not again, then, for the first time in a long time, moving on now from Kellen Moore. I'm going to buy the deep passing game being something that's actually a part of Dak Prescott's, game plan and script. It just felt like so many deep balls, especially last year, were just kind of heat check type of throws, right? It was like, well, we're stuck in the mud here. I'm going to lob one up to our best player, CeeDee Lamb. He might not even see the balls coming his way because it's not, what we originally called. And we're just going to try this because we need to make a big play. Some of them still hit because, the Prescott to Lamb connection is very strong, and a lot of them didn't. I'm going to buy that being a legitimate part of the scripted offense now. Everybody else that they have speed-wise on the outside being a part of that too. That's why we gave the edge to Jalen Brooks over Simi Fehoko. These inside guys as well, drag routes to guys like Jalen Tolbert, just all of it in the pass offense could be way more dynamic. Brandon Cooks, look how long it took me just to mention Brandon Cooks there, who's a legitimate starter they can add to this pass offense too. So I'm buying a complete makeover of this offense under McCarthy, Schottenheimer, and of course the new looks at receiver to give them a chance to actually have the type of passing attack that you need when you talk about all your other mainstay contenders. You know, the Bills, the Bengals, Chiefs all have dominant quarterbacks, dominant passing games. It's time we put Dak Prescott and the Cowboys right in that conversation, and I think they can beat him.
Well, looky here, Sean. Kevin has given you 5 points. So, Tony, maybe you feel cheated on a little bit here. It says, I think the pass game will be better too, but that is because Mike knows how to call a screen pass. Now, what I will say to Sean's point, like I said, I was in Oxnard with my friends from San Antonio Sports Star, and every offensive player we spoke to, maybe you think it's a company line. I thought it was super interesting. I wrote about this. They all mentioned that they all understand the why of everything so much more than they have in the past. Kind of the specific purpose of each particular play call, why each player has the assignment they do, et cetera, et cetera. So it sounds like from a knowledge standpoint, things are at a very different level than they were in the years past. That's not a slight against Kellen Moore. To your point, Sean, that just kind of speaks to Mike McCarthy and his influence. So let's get Sean his points from there. Sean, that was 5 points. That has brought you up to 28. So you've taken the lead over Chris, which, hey, we'll see what happens. Chris, you are up. What are you buying from training camp so far?
I'm buying that the front office saw the weaknesses from last season and they really addressed them in this offseason leading up to training camp. I mean, think about the two position groups that we really lacked in last year with wide receiver and cornerback, and we're looking really deep at those positions right now. I feel like, I mean, our cornerback room is really deep with Eric Scott's coming in and he's playing great. And Stephon Gilmore, I think, is having an immediate impact that can't be like not noticed. Like he's leading by example. He's having that vet presence. He's really being a leader for the rest of the position group. And I think the same goes with Brandon Cooks too. We really lacked a speedster in that wide receiver room last year, and Brandon Cooks it seems like every highlight I see a deep ball to Brandon Cooks in training camp, and I'm just loving that. So I think the front office deserves their flowers, and I'm buying that they really did view this as a win now season and that they had to go out and make moves and address what was wrong from last season.
I'm admittedly drinking a lot of the Kool-Aid with those kinds of things, Chris. But I think there has been a tangible benefit to having both Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, not just in terms of what they bring on the field, but in terms of leadership. And you can think that's hokey, you can think that's corny, but it's real. 3 years ago, I've mentioned this many times before, I thought the Cowboys bringing in Joe McCoy was similar to Mike McCarthy's Packers bringing in Charles Woodson, somebody who had been in the NFL, done some serious things, and kind of needed to be a big brother presence to a young kind of ragtag group of guys who maybe needed a little bit of a push. And I think that we've seen that effect happen. Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore are both highly accomplished players in the NFL. Obviously, Stephon Gilmore has some serious hardware to his name. Plus, they're both incredible football players. That is a very good answer, Chris Halling. Nobody gave you any points though. So
I know. I mean, listen, Kevin, I think Kevin's a cool name. We could maybe, throw me some points. What's funny is I think Kevin has only given me negative points so far. I think he gave me negative to start off the game with wearing this jersey. So.
Kevin has deducted points from you several times tonight.
Yes.
So
yeah, I know the chat's being they're being awfully quiet right now towards me, but maybe I still have some time to win them over.
Tony Catalina, you have the lead for the moment. What are you buying from training camp so far?
Yeah, anytime you mention Micah Parsons, it's going to feel like low-hanging fruit. But I'll tell you what, there's been at least 2 or 3 comments or moments over the last week or two that has completely it almost gave me chills to think about it, right? I'm going to kind of list them out here. For Mike McCarthy to talk about his practice and saying it might have been the most dominant practice he's ever seen from anybody in in his time in the NFL was one of the most serious comments I've ever heard. And then secondly, I saw a comment where Micah Parsons got ranked number 9 in the top 100. And we know the top 100 doesn't mean anything, but just the look, the demeanor, and just his attitude towards it was such of disrespect and disgust that he couldn't possibly believe that there were 8 people in front of him. So I'm buying in the fact that I think Micah Parsons is the most, unfathomable, like the best defensive player in the entire NFL. And I wouldn't speak like that. And he's a Cowboy, so people are gonna say, "Oh, it's homerism." I don't care. I think Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in the league. I think that we're about to see something that is going to be like. We're going to watch this very closely because this is going to be a type of performance from this guy this year that's going to be in rarefied air, something that we probably talk about for years, decades, because the way his mindset is, the way he's talking about it. And for the third thing, he didn't care about anything about money, about his status. He said, "I want to be one of the greatest Hall of Famers of all time," and he wants to win a Super Bowl. And that's what, he won't have to spend another dollar in this town if he wins the Super Bowl. Like, Micah Parsons is literally taking like the book of what to say and how to say it, and I'm just completely sold on the guy.
I didn't catch video of it that day, but a friend of Blog on the Boys, Bobby Belt, did. There was a video of Micah Parsons with a single hand just like throwing Tyron Smith to the ground. And like, we'll all admit that, this is not peak prime Tyron Smith. Like, it's not the, level of impressiveness that it would be had this happened in like 2016. But that doesn't happen. Like, can anyone name like anything that maybe Olivier Vernon was the one dude who like had his way with Tyron Smith? So like, can anybody like ever say they would have thought that that Tyron Smith would have had an Achilles heel like that, Tony?
Yeah, so like obviously you guys know my brother played in the NFL offensive line. I sent him the video of it and he was like, "That's like abnormal," because Tyron Smith is always like the standard. Like, you don't ragdoll Tyron Smith like that. Like, nobody does that. That was absurd.
So Rick has given you 5 points, Tony, for the take on Micah. Kevin has given you 5 points, Tony. Says, "I have a good friend who was a Niners fan who said the same thing. Parsons is the best defender in the league." Chris, for what it's worth, Kevin gave you 1 point.
Hey,
so you are climbing the ranks. As I hand out those points, Tony, Sean, you mentioned the 30 burger. Tony has made it all the way to a 40 burger. So Tony's sitting on 40.
Team 40 burger. I should have gotten that t-shirt. I missed out on.
I think that Kevin bet the over on Tony's points. That's why, and that's why he's doing this right now.
Chris and Sean both tied at 28. I don't know whose opinion I think was the best here. I mean, I think Tony's was kind of the weakest if I'm really assessing them. Like, it's a good one, don't get me wrong, but like, the take is, I'm sorry, I'm watching the Astros game, and holy crap, Kyle Tucker just hit a grand slam to take the lead in the top of the ninth.
What's the score over there?
I have to tweet about this very quickly. Sean, you can talk. I really don't care.
While you're tweeting, I'm going to make the pitch to the chat.
I'm going to block getting it all Astros talk on here.
Brian,
that dude might have had the funniest ejection of the entire Major League season last night, by the way. That was pretty great if you guys saw that. If not, go watch how he got ejected.
Brian, I need you to throw me some points in the chat. Come on, guys.
I'm sorry. That was just too incredible. Oh my gosh, that was sick. The Astros have been playing like crap this whole night.
Were they trailing when he hit the grand slam?
What was that, Sean?
Were they behind in the game when he hit the grand slam?
Yeah, they were losing 3-6, and it's the top of the ninth, and he
that's nonsense. Okay.
Yeah, and it's in Camden Yards. So I mean, it wasn't in left field, so it wasn't like that funny.
No, they pushed back the left field though. It used to be way too easy to hit a homer there. They changed it.
That's what I'm saying. Like it would have been, that would have made it just slightly more epic. By the way, I saw this a moment ago and I didn't want to deter us because I don't know which one of you was making a great point that I definitely remember. Did you guys see the story about the Orioles announcer that was suspended for saying the team sucked? I don't have the volume on the game, obviously. But the crowd at Camden Yards chanted to free him. So that is really cool. That's super cool that like sports fans take stuff into their own hands like that. But speaking of, Caleb has handed out 5 points to Chris just for fun.
Hey.
So and Kevin has said, Chris, if you're going to pander to us all you have to do is tell us how awesome Parsons is.
Micah Parsons is going to win the Super Bowl MVP this year. But also Brian gave me +5 points as well. I don't want to.
You did. He did. Says Tony's was good enough, and I'm super excited about Micah, but that was low hanging fruit. I have to give this friend to Chris. I agree with that completely. That's what I was saying, Tony. Like, it was a good answer.
I said low-hanging fruit to start my argument. I said anytime you mention Micah Parsons, low-hanging fruit.
I'm going to give 5 points to John Jones because John was the person who brought up Kyle Tucker. That was freaking incredible. So that was sick. But yeah, like Tony, your take is like, I think the best player on the Cowboys is going to be really good this year. Like effectively, that's what you said.
No, I said the best player on the Cowboys is going to be the best player in the league. I think he's like, I think this year is going to be something we've never seen before, and it's from a demeanor. It's I don't want to say this because it's corny. He hasn't won anything, but it's like that Jordan-esque, like disrespectful, like, oh, I'm top 10, like that stuff that, like, I don't care about number 9. And yeah, I don't know. It just, you could see way somebody talks, like it's not for show, it's not for acts. And I know Michael Parsons is everywhere, but it's just the way he said it, I bought into it.
Again, like I don't want to say anything negative. It's been like the vibes are really good here, so I don't want to like rock the boat too much. But I just, I feel a little bit differently. That's all I'll say. Kevin Chris has given you 5 points, but also took away 2 again for the Swedish jersey that you have on. So I guess that's 3. Sean, you need to learn anything. It's that you need to beg for points, because Chris has begged for so many that he has now taken the lead. He is in first place with 41
I feel like
points.
we're in the Hunger Games right now, and we're trying to like gain favor.
Like the little
favor from the capital. Yeah.
Wow, man, I'm not handing out points for that, but if I were, that would be actually I am gonna hand out points. That was really clever, Chris. So good job by you. I'm gonna give you 4 points for that to take you up to an even Steven 45. That is where we're at. Sean, you have a lot of work to do. Kevin offers that Parsons is that dude. John is super into the Astros game again. Kevin has handed out 5 points for Sean and Chris. Awesome hats.
Hey.
So
Hey,
Tony,
you're
getting left in the dust here, Tony.
Where's his hat?
I don't know. I mean, look, you saw
the winning hat on.
You saw
right
the
now,
comment the same way I did. So now, Tony, you're at 40. Oh, Sean, I didn't. I don't know why they didn't update here. There you go,
It's a
Sean.
typo.
You're at 33.
It's a typo.
And Chris is at 50. Okay,
No, you can't take back the points.
Okay, enough with the fan. This is the end of the fan points for the moment here. Brian has, given Tony 3 points for that take. So here we go. Let's get Tony his 3 points. So Tony, you can feel loved.
Give me 5 from my hat, and we'll call it even.
No. Tony 43, Sean 33, Chris 50. That's where we're at. Good. Got it. Great. All right. We have to go negative now. What are we not buying from camp so far? Remember that this is your last question. This is your last opportunity to impress not just myself, not just the people watching. Some would say Kyle Tucker, who just did something incredible and heroic. But this has to be something that has happened. You can't just make something up and say you're not buying it. It has to be something that has happened, something that other people are buying, therefore something that you call hogwash on. So we will go in. Sean, you are in last place. All right, we'll give you the advantage here. What are you not buying?
Yeah, this one's kind of tough on the spot. It's been one of those, like, I mean,
what do you mean on the spot? I gave you the rundown like 6 hours ago. What are you talking about?
But did I just not see this on there? Okay, anyway. I'm going to say, I'd go with rookie tight end Luke Shoemaker, who I know is battling some injury stuff, so maybe some of this isn't fair. But even through that, it seems like a lot of the fans and media are still expecting him to really factor into this team's passing game plans and be a factor. I'm starting to think he's a player that we're going to be putting on ice. And, tight end, I've seemed to kind of have this happen before where they continuously look a year ahead. And they don't necessarily need someone to immediately step up. So, there's a lot of pressure in replacing Dalton Schultz on just Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot. You would like to have the trio to potentially get it done, but with more reps for Ferguson and Hendershot, that could be the plus side of that. So I'm going to go ahead and not buy this idea that we should really be putting much expectation on Luke Shoemaker, who's just working his way now into practice, and hopefully some preseason games to follow as well. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see a lot from him and find some packages for him where he can contribute, but I really think the burden almost to 100% point of the tight end group is going to be on Peyton Hendershot, Jake Ferguson, and Shoemaker is the developmental guy waiting in the wings for 24 and beyond.
Okay. All right. So your thing is the Luke Schoonmaker as a whole, as a human. He had his first practice today, and Sean, you just think that's stupid. So just to be very clear, what a day to have this be your answer. By the way, Tony, just so you know, for your answer coming up in a little bit, Caleb says Tony has been winning too much recently. Got to knock him down every once in a while. So Tony, you are in second place. That means you are up. What are you not buying from training camp so far?
This will not be a popular answer, and I know that I'll probably get negative for this, but I'm not buying the Deuce Vaughn story or hype. I just don't. I need to see it. His stature, his size. Dante Fowler, threw him away like it was nothing on a pass protection. And I understand that they say really good positive things. I know he's shifty, he's fast, and everybody wants the small running back to really work out. And they talk about Darren Sproles because the Kansas State connection, and he's 42, 43. There's a lot of parallels in like that side of things, but I don't know. It's an uphill battle, right? Because Cavante Turpin's got a lock on kick return, punt return. Malik, Rico Dowell, Tony Pollard. We're talking about guys that are in front of him. Now, I would love to see some gadgety type things, and I could be shut up really quick on Saturday if he goes out there and kills it. But I have, as a short man myself, who's not tall at all, like I have my reservations about what his ability is and where the limitations are. And I know it's a fun story, and I know the whole thing with his dad makes it a really easy guy to root for, but I think we need to temper our expectations. It's honestly absurd a little bit for a 6th-round guy who has the obvious limitations that he does.
Wow.
Did you see him hide behind Tyron Smith on the screen?
I saw Tyron Smith moving. That's what I was impressed with. Tyron Smith.
Juice is back there somewhere. If we can't say him, the defense can.
Wow, Tony with the ultra wet blanket take. Okay, so let's catch up a little bit here. I actually liked to set maybe Chris up a little bit. We'll see here. I like Joey's comment. Says we're not buying enough of the Mike McCarthy changes to this offense and him calling plays. That's a fair one to have. I don't agree, but that's a fair take. Sean, I'm really sorry because Brian gave you 5 points for the Luke Schoonmaker take that you just had. He said that he noted last week that this has an IR stash vibe to it, and I'm sorry because Kevin removed 5 points from you, so those washed out. Noting that Schoonmaker is a 2nd-round pick, so he needs to be able to play right now. Tony, in response to your Deuce Vaughn take, Joey says that is like saying you hate puppies. So tough scene there. Kevin has just gone full heel for you, Tony Catalina. Deducted 5 points and says that is why we need Zeke, because nobody on the team can pass block. So I think that is the lay of the land as far as points are concerned. So Sean, like I said, yours washed out. Tony, you had 5 removed. This is where we're at with Chris Halling set up for the final question of the night. You see the score, Chris. You basically just have to, pass go and collect $200, and this thing is yours. What are you not buying from training camp so far?
I'm not buying the media narrative that Dak Prescott is the only QB who throws interceptions around the league. It's every single throw that Dak Prescott makes. It's just so criticized, and there's just such a microscope on him. It's going to happen in training camp. There's going to be some mistakes. This is when you iron out those things. And there's this big narrative going around right now that he's throwing all these interceptions. I mean, look at the secondary he's going up against. He's going up against the best ball hawker in the league in Trayvon Diggs. He's got a tough defense to go up against right now. And, he's giving these young guys opportunities. So, there are going to be some risks in that factor. So I'm not buying the fact that Dak is just throwing all these interceptions. I think he's going to have a huge bounce back year this upcoming season. And I think that interception number will actually be in the single digits like he predicted.
Chris, I got to be honest. I like your answer the least because, look, was the Dak Trayvon thing blown up out of stupid levels of proportion? Absolutely. Like we all agree. Is Dak Prescott overly criticized? Absolutely. Completely agreed. Rick has handed, I think this was meant for you, Chris, 5 points for the take on the media. So Rick is going to give you 5 points. He wrote Sean. Sorry, Sean. You know what I mean? Just, yeah. I got to be fair. But Chris, Brian has taken 5 points away. So that's a national media
Brian, come on, man.
Looking for clicks. And then Kevin, so you were at a push so far, Chris. Kevin has also taken 5 away. Says
the general public,
I got a +5 too, so it's another wash. Caleb gave me +5.
That's true. So you're even. Steven says that's an easy +5 for the Dak take. The star tax is so annoying to deal with. Look, I agree with all of you. That the
and +5 from Richard. I'm just pointing it out
fine.
There.
So you're 5 up. You're 5 up. Actually, Kevin has also taken.
Oh my goodness.
So Chris, you've pushed out so far. Okay. I agree that there is a star tax. I like that phrase. So well done in that sense, Caleb. I think we as a fan base have gone too far with it. It's actually become annoying to see random tweets that are like, oh, Lamar Jackson threw 3 picks in practice. I bet that's going to be the headline tomorrow. Or like, I don't know, today, I mean, Al Harris was John with whoever, and people like, oh, this is going to be the headline on, Undisputed tomorrow. Enough. All right. Enough crying foul, enough playing the victim. All right. it is what it is. Like, we don't have to keep whining and complaining about it. Like, we're actually feeding into it by doing that. So I agree with the like general premise here, but we've taken the like issue too far, and we've now become overly sensitive as a result of it. Is that, or Tony, you had your hand raised?
I'm just saying, I mean, I couldn't possibly agree more. Like, honestly, like, I think the one way to stop it is to stop feeding it, right? That's how you get things to stop growing. Like, the whole, the people that came in today, the national guys that came in today and did it for the whole song, the pony show, so if you feed it, it's going to grow. So I couldn't care less. Dak could throw, 100 interceptions and it wouldn't change my perception of how I feel about this season. Like, it's just how it goes. Like, oh, okay. So if he torches the secondary, people are going to say Trayvon Diggs is bad. Look at the conversation with Simi Fehoko last year. And Simi Fehoko beats him on one deep ball, and we don't know if Simi's going to even make the team this year. So it's like, it's all overblown. I think the Cowboys have a star tax. I love that. Actually, that was awesome. But, it just comes with the territory. We are fans of the most polarizing sport team in all of sports. So we got to either just buckle up and just deal with it, or choke it out and not deal with it at all.
Yeah, I think like when we make it an effort to like overhype the credit that Dak rightfully deserves, we like incite this sort of thing. So that's my take on this. For what it's worth, Kevin has given 5 points to Tony for the take. Wow, this is getting a little dicey here at the end. And Rick has also given 5 points to Tony. This was your question, Chris. But Chris, you did push at the end of all things, with all that crazy kind of point tabulation. The ballots are closed. And even though I didn't like your final point a whole lot, Chris, I'm very fond of you, except for your garment tonight. Tonight's score: Tony Catalina 48 points, Sean Martin 33 points, Chris Halling an even Steven 50, which means tonight our roundtable winner is in fact Chris Halling. John Jones with the important note: the Astros won. What a beautiful and wonderful win. Chris Halling, congratulations. How are you feeling?
Feeling great. I think the last 3 roundtables I've been on, I've won. So I'm kind of on a little hot streak right now. I'm not, hey, listen, credit to all the other people on this roundtable, but there's only one winner, and it's got to be me when I'm on. So,
Sean, when you volunteered for tonight's roundtable, you had a bit of a kind of pompous remark. You said, "I'm coming to win," and then Chris actually kind of humbled you and was like, "Well, last time you were there, I won." And Chris lived that out to fruition. So are you regretting talking trash prematurely, Sean?
No, I even tried to play cool while being down most of the night, because usually when I lose these, it's in comeback fashion. Usually I have a lead early, and then somebody comes back at me. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe
you're the Orioles, right? Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, maybe this is playing out just how I need it. Like, I'm going to come from behind too, but too little, too late there at the end. Great job by all you guys, and Chris. You backed up your talk on that, much like fans are expecting the Cowboys to do. So.
Tony, I'm sure your hopes were kind of fluttering there. You know what I mean? With the back and forth math, with the late surge. Yeah, the late 10 points you got to close the gap. I'm sure you were kind of mentally doing like, how far am I behind? Did I make up enough ground? Whatever, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Are you feeling heartbroken? Because I think Chris would enjoy it if you were.
Well, Caleb wanted me humbled. He wanted me knocked down a peg, and that's what happened. So, there you go, Caleb. Congrats.
Well, if you want to feel kicked when you're down, Tony, Brian offers, I think Chris earned this one. Tony brought the fire, but Chris edged him out. Great job, Chris. Chris, you should walk tall. I mean, you really did earn this. Although you did kind of stand in the fire at the end. Nobody really agreed with you.
I know. It's so crazy to me. I thought I was going to blow a 12-point lead because I was supporting Dak Prescott. I thought that would maybe help me out. But no, I mean, I think that everyone did a great job. I do feel like I won kind of 2-on-1. I beat both Tony and Kevin, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. So I'm,
you had Caleb on your team.
I did have Caleb on my team too, but at the end of the day, we're all great. And, I'm really happy to be sharing this and being able to talk Cowboys with you guys. So,
well, congratulations to Chris. Congratulations to Sean. Tony, you hung out. Congratulations to all of us, because we made it to football season. The Dallas Cowboys will in fact play a game on Saturday. We'll of course have you covered all throughout the Blog and the Boys universe. Everybody follow these dudes all over social media, and everybody have a great week. That's really what we want more than anything else. So Tony, are you raising your hand to say something?
No, I was giving everybody peace. You know, turning a new leaf. Tony doesn't need to make sounds anymore.
What is, are you chunking up the deuces, or are we taking a picture for our MySpace profiles in 2009?
I was gonna screenshot it. Yeah.
I think Tony has to make a puppy noise because of the puppy comment earlier. About how it was like saying he didn't like puppies because he didn't like
the spirit of that, Tony. Actually, Tony, this is tough.
Rick called me. Brett Maher.
Rick says you lost because you missed 2 extra points. Wow.
Sean's disappearing right in front of our eyes.
Brandon says that there are a few hanging chads to be accounted for. Brandon Laurie, of course, one of Chris's co-hosts on the new edition or the new version of the Writer's Block. The hanging chads, that's one of those phrases or expressions you don't know, like you don't learn what that means until you're like 18 years old.
I still don't know what that means. I'm sorry.
It's like like the ballots where you poke the holes like a Scantron. It's like the little thing, the little round thing. It's like when it doesn't fall out and it's like hanging.
I remember they had an episode about that on How I Met Your Mother because what's his name? Ted would always wear that every Halloween, and they talked about that. Yeah.
That's a hanging chad. Yeah. Tony, we want you to hang some chad for us here. Why don't you tell us your favorite kind of puppy? You don't have to make a sound. Just tell us your favorite kind, please.
I grew up with a chocolate lab, so I love labs as a whole. I'm a big lab guy.
Now make a sound.
Wow.